Hello everyone, this is Dave Strong from the Schmidt Music Saxophone Shop, and today we're going to talk a little about one of the most important things that can affect your sound on saxophone, and that is your reed. The reed is important for a lot of reasons. Whether you have a good or a bad reed, of course, is important, but what strength you use and which reed is a good fit for your mouthpiece and your saxophone matters as well. So there's a lot of different options with reeds, a lot of different types. We're going to cover just some of the basics. One of the most basic things to know is what that number on a reed means. And it'll either have a number like 2, 2.5, 3, or it'll have something like soft, medium, medium hard. But what that means and what that's referring to is how flexible the reed is. So a lower number is going to be a more flexible reed. The cane will be a little easier to flex and generally a little bit easier to play. As the numbers get higher, we're moving into a stiffer reed or a less flexible reed. Generally, they're all cut the same. They're actually selecting the reeds to put in the boxes based on how flexible that particular piece of cane would be. Or if you're using a synthetic reed, they do some stuff, I don't know what kind of magic they do to give it different flexibilities as well. What I'd say is if you're just starting, a 2.5 is a really good place to start, especially if you're using a basic student mouthpiece and you're building up some chops and embouchure and all that. 2.5 is great to start. You can start on 2, but I actually like to start beginners on a 2.5. I think for saxophone, that's pretty attainable and you can get a pretty nice sound. With 2, it starts to thin out a little bit. Now, if you have been playing a little bit and you're trying to figure out what kind of reed strength to play, generally for me, my rule of thumb is the bigger tip opening a mouthpiece I have, the softer I go with the reed, and the smaller tip opening, a harder reed. So the tip opening is the gap between the tip of the reed and the tip of the mouthpiece. So it makes sense. If you're vibrating the reed a big distance, you need it to be a little softer and more flexible. But if you're only vibrating at this tiny distance, a harder reed is going to still be pretty easy to play. And that's something I didn't know forever. And I'd wonder why I'd play like an 8, 9 tip opening mouthpiece with a 3.5. And it was impossible. It was because I wasn't matching those correctly together. And how you'll know if you're on or you're off, a way too hard reed, it's going to feel harder to play, but also you're going to have a lot of air in the sound. You're going to have a lot of and with a reed that's too soft, it's going to feel maybe a little brighter. You're going to feel it kind of close up like you can't push enough air through it, and just a little thinner sound. So yeah, too hard of a reed is going to give you that airy sound. Too soft of a reed will be a little thinner sound, and you want to try some different stuff and get one that gets you right in the middle, where it's a little bit of work to play it, but it sounds good, but you're not just completely destroying your chops in 5 minutes of playing. The other thing, and I see this with too many students, is knowing when to change your reed. A lot of times you can just look at it. The reed should be like this, nice and round at the top, no chips, no cracks in it. Looks like it would seal at the tip of the mouthpiece. I'm going to do a little demo here, and I'm going to sacrifice one of my reeds that's about to go and show you the difference between a reed that is matching and symmetrical with the tip and one that might have some chips or cracks in it. So here's the reed before any damage done to it. And this pains me to do this, but here we go. We're going to just put a little crack in the reed. Let's say you bumped it against something and hit it on your music stand. And sometimes that'll happen, so it separates a little bit there. Now, this shouldn't affect it way too much, but it's going to start negatively impacting my sound. Not much of a difference, but I do hear a little more airiness, and I hear like a little annoying buzz. I don't know if that'll come through on the mic or not, but let's do a little more. I have gone into middle and high schools and looked at people's reeds that they're still playing on, and it's amazing. Often I'll see a chunk out of the side. That's an easy way for that to get brittle and break off. So now I'm gonna try to play it with just that little chunk out of the side. You'd think it wouldn't affect it much, but let's see if it does. Yeah, I can muscle past it, but it feels terrible to play. It's way harder to get the note out, and I hear a weird buzz in there. Now I'm going to move this on to full-blown. Looks like you've been chewing on your reed. A couple splits in there. Chunk out of the middle there. And I kid you not, I have seen people trying to play on reeds like this more often than I can count. But yeah, we'll take a chip out of the middle right there and see how that affects our sound. I'm amazed I can get a sound out on that, but that feels terrible and it sounds airy. And sometimes I'll be working with a student, we'll be doing all kinds of things to try to diagnose I just never get my low notes out well, or my sound sounds weird in the area, and I'm having them take in more mouthpiece, working on embouchure, and then I look at the reed and go, oh, how long have you had that one? Well, it's been a few months, you know. So really my rule of thumb is I switch reeds, maybe try to get them to last about a couple weeks. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes they last a couple days. I've had them last a couple months, and that's amazing. You get a really good reed and you take good care of it. It can last quite a long time. I've had reeds last 3 months. So yeah, know when to let them go. I know it breaks my heart too when I lose a good reed, but it's not worth just working twice as hard for half the results. Now to make them last a little longer, something like this. This is made by D'Addario. Holds my reeds, holds them flat against the surface, and has little grooves in here that wicks the moisture away. And this one I really like because I live in Minnesota and we have humidity really high and really low depending on the season or depending on the day. This little pack in here keeps them at a constant 72% humidity. There's lots of companies that make these though. Van Doren's ones are really good. Plenty of other ones out there. But yeah, keeping it in this rather than keeping it in the little thing that the reed came in is going to make them last a lot longer. And then the last part is just different cuts of reed. Now this is where it gets more complicated, but if you go to a music store, you'll see Van Doren makes the Javas, the Java Reds, the V16s. We could talk for hours about the differences in those. Really what I'd say is if you can get a sample pack and try some, or just bite the bullet and buy a box of reeds. I like Lavaz myself, that's what I've been playing a long time, but the D'Addario Select Jazz are fantastic, the Rigatti Golds are fantastic, and I'm probably missing a bunch of others. But the way those reeds are cut, and different reeds, some will be made more for jazz, some will be made more for classical playing, and they'll push your sound a little brighter and darker, and they'll have various degrees of flexibility. In a future video, I'm going to get a bunch of different types of reeds and kind of play through them and show how they affect the sound. And yeah, that's about it for this video. Big takeaways, in my opinion, are know when to change your reed to a new reed, and make sure you're playing the right strength of reed. It's not a contest. Just because you're playing a number 4 reed doesn't mean that's the best fit for you. You might be able to get out of sound, but the best strength of reed is going to give you your best sound on your particular equipment. And to me, reeds are as important, if not more important, than the mouthpiece and the instrument you're playing on. I would rather have a good mouthpiece and a reed and a pretty basic saxophone than the other way around, because this is where the sound starts and it's the most important part. As always, if you have any questions or have any ideas for future videos or want to get in contact with me in any way, reach out to me in the comments below or at the saxophone shop at schmidtmusic.com. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.